Welcome back to Alpha to Omega. Today we're going to be recapping all our prior videos. So let's get right into it. The universe as a book. As we talked about previously, the human experience can be thought of in many different respects, one of which is our ability to critically think and to reason, our ability to feel, and also the tangible senses in which we utilize to experience this world that we inhabit. And if we step back and think about it, we can see that when we do experience the world is operating like a book because we are interacting with it and we are reading it. If we draw an analogy, we can think of particles like letters, and when those particles are arranged in a certain way, they form words, and along with other words, they can form sentences and paragraphs and chapters in an entire story. So for example, the particles of the sun are like letters, and when they come together, they form the word that we know as the object called the sun, the same with the moon or the stars or anything else around us. And when they all come together at once, they form an entire book of the universe that we can read and experience in our everyday life. While we are a reader of this book, we too are a part of that book because just like the sun and the moon and the stars, we are also essentially particles that come together to form a word that we call the human being. And the human being, unlike any other thing in the known universe, can not only think and feel, but can think and feel in innumerable ways such that it can comprehend the entirety of the cosmos. It is as if we are the primary reader of this book of the universe. Meaning. So in that sense, we can think of the book of the universe as conveying something meaningful to us. In other words, we look at the material world, the outer reality of things, the clothes, and we can see the inward aspect of it. Things mean something. Not only do they mean something, but because they mean something to us, they inform how we think and how we feel and what we do in this world. If the question is asked, are human beings projecting meaning onto the world, or are they receiving meaning from the external objects that they come in contact with? Well, the simple answer to that is, if we were to take an object away, for example, if we were to take an object like the sun away, we would have no comprehension of the something called the sun. We would not experience its heat or its warmth on a bright day. And so therefore we wouldn't have a reaction to it as to whether we like a warm day or we do not. So in other words, the world does mean something. There is something inherently meaningful within it. What we do with it, though, however, is our own subjective perception of the world. Likewise, we can think of our own thoughts and our feelings as being meaningful. When somebody else comes in contact with us, or when you're watching this video, you are perceiving what I'm doing, my actions, as something meaningful for you. What you do with it, however, is up to you. Just like when somebody interacts with you or interacts with me, they have a subjective perception of how I'm presenting myself. I am conveying something meaningful to them, but they are doing something with it in accordance with how they perceive it. This is what the book of the universe is, and this is our relationship as a reader towards it. Who is the author? Within that realization that the universe is a book and that we are reading it at every moment, is that there must be an author to this universe. Whether that author is of the nature of things themselves, or in other words, whether things are authoring themselves into being, or whether that author is beyond the nature of this world, or in other words, something external to the reality that we are experiencing is authoring things into being at every moment. The question is, how do we determine which of those two choices must be the truth? And can we be certain of it? So first, if we examine the things themselves, we can experience meaningful qualities about them. For example, again, if we look at the sun, we can see that there is some sort of knowledge there. In other words, there are some qualities that define the sun as to what makes it a sun. For example, its shape, its proportions, its chemical qualities, its ability to radiate light and to emit heat onto its surrounding celestial bodies in the solar system. But can the particles themselves, do they have any sort of knowledge of what it means to be a sun? Do they know what the qualities of a sun are, or for that matter, any sort of object including themselves? The obvious answer is no. Not only that, do they have the power to come together at once to form a sun? Do they have any sort of knowledge about that and the ability to do so, to come together and form a sun at any given moment? Again, the answer is no. And do they exhibit a choice to say that we are going to together at once in collective unison emit light to the earth, emit energy, emit heat, exert a gravitational pull such that the planets revolve around us? No, it's quite obvious. And for that matter, any sort of particle in the universe demonstrates no such quality. Now, if we go even beyond that, if we look at, for example, a mother who treats their child with mercy and compassion, can we find those qualities in the mother themselves, in the cells of the mother, the DNA, the organs, the brain, the heart? There's no such thing, because those qualities are fundamentally immaterial. So can material objects, material particles, can they give rise to immaterial, meaningful qualities that we experience in the everyday world? It's quite obvious that they cannot. They can't even be demonstrated. And just like a book, the author to this universe at every moment must be then beyond the nature of the world. Because then, just like a book, we can't find the author in it. The author must be beyond it. But the author is using the book of the universe to convey their qualities to us. Who is this author? As previously stated, the author is conveying the qualities of what makes them an author through this book of the universe. Again, if we go back to the analogy, if we look at a book and we see ink on a page, we know the ink in and of itself, or the letters, or the words, or the sentences and chapters and paragraphs and chapters, they themselves cannot author themselves into being and arrange themselves in a particular manner or an order in which we understand things. However, they do act as conduits, as means, as instruments, to convey to us what the author intends, the author's knowledge about a subject, their power to demonstrate their knowledge, and the will to do so. Our job as readers is to understand this author then, to use the book of the universe to communicate with the author, because that's what we do every day. We experience the world. We're reading it whether we're aware of it or not. The question though is, are we aware of the authoring taking place? Because we may experience the world. I may experience that it's hot outside or that it's raining, but do I realize that they're actually being authored into being at every moment? And in other words, the author is trying to convey some sort of quality about themselves to me at that given moment. For example, as we said previously, their knowledge to be able to author something into being, the power to do so, the will, potentially mercy or compassion or wisdom, or the ability to order things and to structure things in a particular way. Are we aware of that? Because that essentially, if we really distill the nature of the universe down to its essence, that's what's really taking place. Everything else can be thought of as being secondary, because everything that we do experience is fundamentally ephemeral or transient. However, because we experience the world at every moment, even though that world is ephemeral, we know that the author to the universe must not be ephemeral. They must be eternal, because they are beyond the nature of space and time. My purpose. So if we come to a certain conclusion that the author of the universe, more fundamentally the book of the universe, must be beyond the nature of space and time, therefore not only must be eternal, but also must be absolute, in that they cannot be comprehended because they can't be comprehended within the nature of this reality, we realize that we are communicating with an author beyond the nature of space and time to understand them, but understand them through their manifestation in this book that they're writing at every moment. That author is what collectively people refer to as God. But if I were to be more specific, the conclusion that we make does not presume God. Rather, we use the universe, the book of the universe. We open it up like any other book. We are consciously aware that we're reading it, and we come to a certain conclusion that that author must be beyond the nature of this world. That whoever that one must be, we collectively refer to him or it as God. And that one must be not only beyond the nature of space and time, but it implies that he or it must be absolute or beyond our sort of comprehension, beyond the nature of ephemerality and transience, and therefore must be eternal. The question, though, is then why are we being given being along with the collective reality of this universe, this entire book? What is the purpose in it? What are we doing here? And what is the necessity in reading? The question can really be found, or the answer can be really found in the question, because the purpose of reading is to not only understand who that author must be, but implicitly then who we are as human beings. Because then if we see what the reality of the universe is, what its essence is, what its purpose is, then we know what we're doing here. We're readers. We have to understand who we are, what the nature of the world means, so that we can understand our author. So therefore, we can ask the question, where do we come from? What are we doing here? And where are we going? Otherwise, we're just left to our own devices. We are just sort of moving through the world, going through the motions every day, eating, sleeping, drinking, working, and nothing more. And one day, just like we were born from the womb of our mother, we will enter the womb of our grave. The next step. So now that we understand what's actually taking place, that this universe is a book that we are reading, we too are a part of that book, we are our own reader of this world, that this book, which includes ourselves, must have an author that gives it being, that writes it into being at every moment that we experience it. That author must be beyond the nature of space and time, beyond the nature of ephemerality and our comprehension, because if we could comprehend it, we would find it in the universe in and of itself. We would find the author, like a book, in the book itself, but that can't be logically the case. And we understand that the author, just like in a book, is conveying their qualities to us so that we can understand that author, and in some sense, understand who we are and what we're doing here. Then what is the next step then? How do we go about processing what we're reading such that not only does it inform how we see the world, how we view it, but also then how we think about things, how we feel about things, and what are our actions? That really is the next step of what it means to be human, because reading just for reading's sake is simply just entertainment. It doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. I think we'll try to answer these questions in our next video and further upcoming videos. But until then, think about it. And I'll see you guys next time.